A popular diet followed by millions was just proven by a recent study to increase your risk of cardiovascular death by 91%. Many health experts have told us that it's good for us, and countless longevity experts say they follow it themselves. And research has proven that it will indeed help you in areas of your health like reduced body weight, smaller waist size, lower your body's fat mass. It has also been shown to improve insulin resistance and blood lipids. And yet this new study says it will increase your risk of cardiovascular death, which commonly means a heart attack or a stroke, by 91%. What is this diet, and why is it that something so good for you is now considered to be bad for you? The diet is a version of intermittent fasting with an 8-hour eating window, also known as time-restricted eating. In this diet, you go without eating for 16 hours a day. An example of this could be eating your first meal at 10 a.m. and your last meal of the day at 6 p.m. It's a popular regimen that has gained a lot of traction with a number of health experts. The logic of this diet is that we subject our bodies to short periods of hunger. Experts say that going hungry places a stress on our bodies, which is actually a survival mechanism. It triggers a defensive reaction, which promotes health and anti-aging. Going without food for an extended period of time can also promote autophagy, the natural process by which our cells consume themselves. Autophagy is a maintenance process where our cells rid themselves of the detritus that is created by metabolism. Among other things, it's considered a very positive state to help keep our brains healthy and reduce our risk for Alzheimer's disease. Yet just a few days ago, at a recent conference of the American Heart Association, researchers shared the surprising results of a study that concluded that people who follow an 8-hour time-restricted eating schedule had a 91% higher risk of death from cardiovascular disease. And this was compared to people who had a more traditional eating schedule of about 16 hours a day. Other important and possibly shocking outcomes noted by the researchers include time-restricted eating did not reduce your risk of death at all due to any cause. And if you have cancer, an eating window of more than 16 hours a day, which means fasting for fewer than 8 hours, which many people might consider to not be a fast at all, actually was associated with a lower risk that you die from cancer. The lead researchers stated, "We were surprised to find that people who followed an 8-hour time-restricted eating schedule were more likely to die from cardiovascular disease." Even though this type of diet has been popular due to its potential short-term benefits, our research clearly shows that compared with the typical eating window of 12 to 16 hours a day, a shorter eating duration was not associated with living longer. Here are some of the details of the study. It included approximately 20,000 adults in the US with an average age of 49 years. The health histories of participants were tracked for a median time period of 8 years and a maximum time period of 17 years. Participants were about half and half men and women. And the racial and ethnic breakdown was as follows. Non-Hispanic whites, 73%, Hispanics, 11%, non-Hispanic blacks, 8%, and others, 7%. Again, what makes this so surprising is that many scientists and longevity experts tout time-restricted eating as a very helpful practice. Previous research has found that time-restricted eating improves several health measures, such as blood pressure, blood glucose, and cholesterol levels. This 2022 meta-analysis that appeared in Frontiers in Nutrition looked at the effects of intermittent fasting compared to a traditional non-fasting diet. They looked at 43 randomized controlled trials, including almost 2,500 participants. The researchers concluded that with intermittent fasting, participants had lower weight and lower body mass indices. They had smaller waist sizes. They found that intermittent fasting also regulated fat mass more effectively than a non-fasted diet. And finally, their cholesterol and triglyceride concentrations after intermittent fasting were also lower. Now, that study that I just mentioned covered all forms of intermittent fasting of which time-restricted eating is a subset. This next study here looked exclusively at time-restricted eating and concluded that it improved insulin sensitivity, blood pressure, and oxidative stress. The authors concluded that time-restricted eating was good for your cardiometabolic health. This next study looked at time-restricted eating in college students. So study participants were younger than those in the American Heart Association study, but the results were also positive. They found that time-restricted eating was associated with significant reductions in body fat, blood pressure, and significant increases in certain hormones that help protect against inflammation and enhance our insulin sensitivity. They also found that it raised HDL-C, which is considered our good cholesterol. And as I mentioned, several health experts and longevity gurus, including David Sinclair and Brian Johnson, for example, both practice and endorse time-restricted eating. So what could be the reason for the surprising results of this latest study? To begin with, the study's authors only released summary results, and the actual study has not yet been made available. So there may be some details that will help us make sense of the conclusion. Scientists familiar with the presentation identified a few limitations, which include the fact that participants self-report information, so they simply may not have clearly recalled their eating patterns. And another factor that could help would be information on other things that are important for health, like the foods eaten and their nutritional quality. So this is probably one of those situations where the science is still being developed and we still have more to learn. And keep in mind that while the study identified an association between an 8-hour eating window and cardiovascular death, this does not mean that time-restricted eating actually caused cardiovascular death. As with all things related to diet and nutrition, you should never make changes without first checking with your doctor. But it's crucial, especially if you have an existing heart condition or cancer, to be aware of the results set forth in this study. Speak with your doctor to make sure you have a personalized approach that is aligned with your individual health status and the latest scientific evidence. Thanks for watching, and please see my other videos here, all devoted to how you can take the best care of yourself and your loved ones.